Okay, James. Just get us set up here. Alright. Let's hide this. Okay. So we're just waiting for Jim to join in, and we'll get ready to start. Did you get the live links?
Yeah. Those.
Okay, great. So we'll be starting in a few minutes. Is there anything you want to announce, James, while we're waiting on Jim?
No, I want to wait till 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So we chance of people. I don't want to.
Yeah. I think this first week of July may be a little slow in viewership. I think people are vacationing this week.
Yeah.
So.
Do you hear an echo?
I hear a little one.
I'm hearing my voice on your speaker.
Hear my voice through your speaker. I don't know. Do you have, by any chance, did you click those links, those live links, and have one of them open?
No.
No. So I don't hear the echo on this side. It's only kind of like, I think what I'm hearing is like I think I probably just hear your fan. I think that's what I'm hearing. But I don't hear it on my side. Let me just double check on the stream.
There's a little bit high.
See, I don't hear it back here. Do you hear it when I'm talking?
No, just when I'm talking.
Okay. So I don't hear it on my side.
Mm-hmm.
Let me double check.
Turn your volume. Let me.
Hold on, I'm gonna hit.
Okay. Well, that's mute, but so I don't hear anything.
Okay.
So
Let me see. I'm gonna try.
Are you putting the video on the device as well?
I'm sorry?
Do you have another open with?
No, I don't even have it opened on my phone.
But there's a lag. Like when you're talking, your voice syncs with.
And you're sure none of the tabs are open on your browser from the live links I sent you?
Yeah. Just you're not syncing. Your voice and not synced.
Oh, okay. Let me just double. Yeah, I noticed that right now. I'm looking at my video and everything is not linked, and I'm on the Wi-Fi up here.
Try to global network to see if that one.
Okay. Hopefully it doesn't drop the whole broadcast. So.
Oh, okay.
I think I'll just, as long as Jim isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you look fine on mine. You're going in time. So. We'll get that going in just a minute. And I saw that there was an update for StreamYard. So now I can actually move positions of our guests and stuff on here. So that will be nice. I can put Jim up here big. There he is. And
where?
Oh, yeah.
How's it going, guys?
Doing well, Jim. How does the sound? I know I'm a little off sync. I don't know why mine's a little choppy. James's video and audio looks fine to me.
Do I look like I'm following you, or am I
Yes,
behind too?
you look perfect on your site. Everything.
But you're
You don't look like you're speaking in subtitles.
You just said words that my wife has never said. You look perfect. I've never heard.
But there's a really bad accent off lists.
Are you hearing an echo with me,
Yeah.
Jim? When you hear it,
I'm hearing.
do you hear my voice in echo?
I thought I did.
I'm hearing Jim's.
Are you hearing me?
Going.
Okay, so I don't hear an echo coming off of mine. So
No, we're picking up your mic, your speaker, your audio. We're picking up your audio on our microphone.
Okay, I just turned mine back on. I've had it off when you said that it's coming off of mine. I had my microphone off during that time.
No, he means he says on mine that he's hearing an echo with me. Are you hearing my voice in echo?
No,
as well?
I only hear James.
No, it's not your
and
voice.
me.
It's when we're speaking, when I'm speaking, I hear an echo coming from your computer. Because you're not synced. Your video and audio are not synced.
Oh, maybe.
Turn your audio off for a second.
Yeah. Okay. Now I don't hear it. Now it's normal.
It sounds clear.
Yeah. Now it sounds clear.
Yeah. How weird.
So it's something on mine. But I don't know what. Because nothing else is open. This is the only video frame.
James's head looks a little different. I don't know if you have it pulled back or you've cut some of it.
He's got it. He's got it there in the little. Well, great. Well, we're gonna get ready to start. Let me get our little stuff synced up here.
I'll send you the PDF.
Perfect. I'll get that all started up.
So I have a new product to show off.
Ooh, cool. You had a new one last month too.
Did I? What was last month?
What was it?
I don't think it was last month. Maybe
it was the one before. It was pretty recent. And I'm trying to remember what it was.
I don't remember either. Melissa, do you remember? I mean, we had the acrylic, the acrylic system.
We might have been talking about what we were going to have out.
Well, the float frame was where the images printed onto acrylic glass and put in the frame. Does that sound familiar to you, Jim? Is that what you think it was?
I don't remember now.
That's the last new product. Well, technically, the newest product we did it's a revision of the existing one, and that is we have switched our artisan canvas to be utilizing what we call resin inks. Resin inks are a much more durable, wider color gamut ink than the solvent inks that we were using previously, and generally they're going to just last longer. The question we get a lot of times is, are they archival? Well, I wrote about this on the introduction of this particular change, and it's in our blog. It's one of the most recent blogs, but it talks about them being archival, or answers that question. And yes, they are. They're not officially labeled as archival, and you have to kind of take that nomenclature with a little bit of a grain of salt, because there's no it's used very loosely. There are organizations that do test archivability, but but by the nature of certain inks, even if they hadn't been tested, just by the nature of the ink formulation themselves, they're going to be archival, even if they haven't tested. They're going to be more durable, long lasting, have less fading than, say, those that are labeled archival, just because of the nature of the inks, the formulation. So it's like they're a water-based ink, but they're the pigments are encapsulated in a resin. It's very similar to the whole latex ink phenomena that HP came up with maybe a decade or so ago. Of course, that technology has improved, and we did look at that, and we looked at the Epson inks as well, the new Epson resin inks, and we did some side-by-side comparisons, just found superior results as far as print quality, as far as scratch test and things of that nature. I can't say one is better than the other as far as the resin versus the latex. They're both very durable, but just overall color gamut, transitions from dark to light, grayscale, more neutral grays. Just overall, we're just able to get a better print quality. So that's that was last month. This month and this year, our intent was not to launch a whole bunch of new products, but sometimes it just kind of happens. This year, and I have a sample, and it's probably better illustrated on our website. But this is the new. I don't know if y'all, but I guess I'm not in the camera. This is a new. It's a new type of acrylic print. It's a freestanding, something that you place on the tabletop, shelf, desk, what have you. And Melissa's scrolling down. You can see the acrylic plaques, we call them. You could print anything from, a little, award or a photo, people's artwork. I won't be surprised if we see people posting, little signs and stuff that they put on, on a receptionist desk or something like that. But they're really cool. The print quality is outstanding. It's printed directly to the back of the acrylic, very much like the acrylic float frame products that we have. Same process, actually. They're printed along side by side with those, and it comes with a stand. This particular solid wood stand is going to be made out of either maples or walnut, but again, solid wood. And we actually make these here. We don't buy these in bulk. We actually manufacture these stands. They look really nice too. So these have just been added. If you go back to Melissa, go back to the picture that shows the two of them for that particular category at the upper left. You can see one is what we call, you've probably seen these on Etsy and elsewhere, these Spotify style music plaques, which are quite popular. Well, I'm going to be actually writing, and what you'll notice is that the background is transparent. So the print is, the color is the black, and the photo is only isolated only on certain parts of the acrylic. We call it kind of decal style. And so I'm going to be writing up a post in our blog on instructions as to how to prepare your file if you want to get that sort of effect. And really, it comes down to just utilizing layers in a program like Photoshop, and you would essentially have one layer that's your color, and then a masking layer, which you would label as white, WHITE, and it would be just a solid layer with the particular shape or contour of what you want printed. And that tells our printer to use that as a reference point, so it knows to lay down a layer of white ink in only those particular spots that you specify in that white layer of your image. And then color is color is printed in that particular area as well. But any color outside of that won't get outside of that. The white mask won't get printed. I think it'll be more clear when you see the post as to how to do that. So it's kind of a cool effect. Again, we'll call it decal style, and it'll also for some really dynamic ways of creating these acrylic plaques and displaying artwork and so forth. And finally, what you do is you would save that file in a TIFF with the layers preserved, which is something you can do in programs like Photoshop and some of the other image editing tools out there. So that's the newest product. It is available, so people can start ordering that today. However, I will suggest that if anyone's planning on ordering one of these within the next 24 hours, to wait. Sign up for our newsletter, because we will be having a sale. I don't have it's not ready yet. Couldn't get it ready in time before we started, but there will be a sale where these will be offered at a discounted price, so you can try them out, print a family photo, print your artwork, what have you, and provide us some feedback on what you think. And I'm planning on printing some. I just got back from Alaska last week. I was in Alaska, so I've got some beautiful photos. So I'm looking forward to putting a few of those on some of these. And that's all I have. I guess we should now turn it over to the incredible one and only. Well, not the one and only, but the incredible version of Jim Landers.
So, how did you enjoy that Alaska trip?
It was awesome.
Yeah,
I was really, I love the mountains, and maybe it goes back to my ancestry. On the Greek side, they lived in mountains, and then on the Slovakian side, they lived in mountains. So it's just maybe it's in my DNA. But man, I've seen the Rockies, the Appalachians, and
yeah.
I've even seen I've seen the Swiss Alps from the air. But to see the mountains in Alaska, and then we started off in Vancouver in British Columbia. So just that whole region, I mean, but Alaska especially, it was all inspiring. And I've always been inspired by the Rockies, but man, something about, I think it is just, you feel just so dwarfed by them. I mean, they're just, they're so tall, and I know there's mountains. I would love to see the Himalayas, but yeah, it's just, we're in these, and for basically we were on a cruise, so we're on a cruise ship, but we're going through these channels, and some of these channels are 1,000 feet deep or so. So the mountains go further down, and these are narrow channels, and then these snow-capped mountains in the middle are, in June and end of June, July, are on each side of you, and you almost have to look up vertically to see them. I mean, they're like looming. You feel like you could touch them, but I mean, there's like maybe 50 to 100 yards off each side of the ship, and you're just looking up, like, wow, and you see the snow up there, and it's just amazing.
So can I assume you got some beautiful photographs?
I did. Also got some photos which didn't come out all that good. But what was fun is my daughter, my 10-year-old daughter, she has really expressed an interest in photography. So
she'll have to join the tournament,
well,
the youth tournament a week
Yeah.
from Sunday.
Yeah, I don't think she's quite ready for that yet. She's still trying to figure out how to turn the camera on and off.
I bet she could win I bet she could win. If she's got an eye, she could probably win. There's not going to be a whole lot that are going to be there, so it'll be fun for her.
Yeah, she definitely was enjoying grabbing the camera and taking pictures. So
Nice.
I shot more photos with my iPhone than I did with my DSLR. She shot more photos with the DSLR. So
that's fantastic. Yeah. I love it. Then I'm thinking she needs to be at that tournament. It's just a fun tournament. It's not the best. The people that claim themselves to be the best, and it's only for ages 5 to 15.
Yeah. Well, I'll bring it up to her, see if she wants to do. She's not exactly a morning person. I will warn you. She takes after me.
That is a morning event. 8 o'clock in the morning is the start time. So yeah. And you'd have to drive all the way across town, so you'd be leaving at 7.
Oh man. Well, I have my wife do it.
Of course.
Like I said, I'm not a morning person either.
Love it. That's funny.
Anyway, yeah. So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, would you like to talk about the moon? The one that's above those mountains you were just talking about?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have a supermoon coming on July 13th. This month's full moon is a supermoon. It's supposed to actually be the largest one of 2022 of the supermoons.
Wow. Yeah, if you were to go to timeanddate.com,
Okay.
So I'm going to tease you with this. A wonderful woman named Norma, who regularly participates in things that I do, sent me some great information that I want to share with you guys. If you go to timeanddate.com, this website's going to show the supermoon on the 13th. That's Wednesday. I mean, it's just right around the corner. According to it, it says it's the biggest, brightest, and closest supermoon to Earth this entire year. So, Norma, thank you for sending that to us.
Here is that thing. And time and date, actually, like I say, go moon in phases. You can grab the moon in phases for the whole year. Significant moon events that you can capture on here. So that's pretty neat. Actually, this one's called the buck moon. And
buck.
Yeah, it gets its name from the almanac. They use how they name their things would come from either Indian names or European background, but they go with the buck moon because during summer, that's when deers go ahead and their antlers regrow during summertime, so it's called the buck moon.
Cool.
So yeah, so we got some moon. I did some moon research on here and got to see all of those dates. But that's that timeanddate.com that you were talking about. And having those available there. And I'm going to get ready to stop sharing there. Well, actually, I wanted to show something else on there that we were talking about because when people go ahead and get their moon photos and they'll tend to get something like this. Like I liked your description, getting more than just that little white dot in your photos, just a tiny little white dot. And I know anybody who uses cell phones tends to get these kind of photos. I got something like this, but it was kind of pink during the red moon. So we want to look at getting some of these really nice, pretty moon shots and some silhouettes with the moon behind it, and I think you will have great examples of all of that.
Those are good. I'm glad you shared those.
So yeah, so if you can tell us how to achieve that, that would be great. So that I'm hoping a lot of people got to take advantage of the what do you call it, the firework photos.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely saw some good ones. I think I saw fewer this year overall than I have in the past. So, but still, the ones I saw were amazing. Beautiful images. So I'll start off with a bit of sarcasm because, well, I like sarcasm. Don't you just love that little ball of light that shows up instead of the moon and its craters? No, of course not. I want it to look like the moon, the vision that I have in my head, what I'm seeing with my eyes, not some ball of light that's kind of radiating beyond it. So to get things started off, or get things started right, let's answer the question. Why do you see sometimes in photographs that the moon looks just too bright? It looks overexposed. There are several things that can affect the quality of your images. The number one issue is, well, the exposure. How much light is in your photograph and affecting the parts of the image like the subject and the background. Of course, this can be broken up into quality of light. This can be lighting ratios, color balance, etc. But for now, I want to first isolate amount of light. The location of your subject is the only thing that matters. Your location is irrelevant. So most who are photographing the moon, who know a little about how to control the amount of light entering into your camera, will think, well, it's dark, so therefore I need more light. It's not where you are that matters. It's where your subject is. And your subject isn't in the dark. That's why it's bright. It's in the sunlight. So therefore, you'd be wrong if you thought it needed more light. The moon is your subject. It's not in the dark. It's bright and sunny. So you have to think about where your subject is and choose your lighting as if it were a bright and sunny day, because your subject is in a bright and sunny day. Now that would be the moon on a normal day. We must think of it as with less light than normal, because if we're thinking of things like the eclipse, there is a difference there. But just photographing the moon, like next week on Wednesday, if you're out photographing that super moon, the buck moon, as I just learned because Melissa shared that with us, if you're photographing that moon, it is bright. It's going to be beautiful. If you're in a position where you can see it clearly, you're in a beautiful day where it's beautiful conditions where the weather it doesn't have a lot of clouds, you're going to be able to see this. But we have to be thinking about the amount of light that we need, and we're going to be talking about that more in just a moment. I want to move into the tools that you need. Now, I'll start off with the most obvious. You need a camera of some sort. A mirrorless, a DSLR, a cell phone. You need something that has the ability to change the amount of light coming in. And cell phones have that. You may have to get an app, but cell phones have it too. But of course, mirrorless and DSLR film cameras have the ability because you've got ISO, shutter speed, and f-stop. You've got the 3 light variables. You're going to want to put it in manual mode. You're not going to get a good photograph in program mode or shutter priority or aperture priority. That's when you get the moon as being this big ball of light that's radiating beyond its edges. We'll talk more about that here in just a moment. Let's talk about what lens you might want to use. Now, if you only have one lens, then you only have one lens. But if you've got an option, if you've got the option of a longer focal length lens, a higher number, so you may, if you've got a kit lens for a DSLR or a mirrorless, maybe it's the 18 to 55 millimeter lens. 55 is not a large numbered focal length, but those numbers, we usually refer to them as zoom, those are called focal length. Zoom is just the ability to vary the focal length, meaning you can turn it to change its focal length, as opposed to a fixed focal length lens, where that's more often called prime. So prime and zoom. So I want to choose, if I have an option, a longer focal length lens, a higher number, and it's measured in millimeters. So ideally something that's 200 millimeters or larger. I would say 200 millimeters really isn't enough, but it's better than a lot of others for this particular purpose. The moon will look tiny, even still, if you've got a 200 millimeter lens. It's still going to look tiny. If you have it available to you, 300, 400, 500, 600 is really what you want. And even greater than that if you have it. But these lenses get to the point where they're very expensive and very few people will have access to them. Now, you could rent. So you could have access to it that way. But as far as what we own, we generally don't have focal lengths greater than 400. Most of us. There's a handful of us that, of course, do. And I'm going to use those if I have access to them. A 400 millimeter, a 500 millimeter, a 1,000 millimeter. Those are going to be most ideal, because when you look at the frame in a 200 millimeter photograph, if you're using the focal length of 200 millimeters, the moon's going to be that big in it. It's tiny, relatively speaking. And with 400, it just doubles in size. So when we get to 1,000 millimeters, 1,500 millimeters, now we're starting to fill the frame. Oh, thank you for showing that. Yeah, so that's exactly what you can expect with different focal lengths. Now you'll notice that was that's the blood moon. So I when I created that, I didn't actually have those lenses, so those are approximations from a photograph I did of the blood moon. But that's what you can expect from different focal lengths. And so you want those higher numbers. Now, you can always crop afterwards. And if you have a large image sensor with a lot of pixels, then it actually still looks pretty good when you crop it. But for a lot of us, when you zoom in that much and crop, it actually looks pretty bad. So do we want to do that? It depends. The newer cameras, the ones with the larger image sensors and the larger number of pixels on that image sensor, are going to do a better job if you're going to need to be cropping in this much. So that's some ideas of what the lenses are. Now let's talk about your tripod, because I want to keep my lens, my camera, still while I'm creating this image. So we don't want any motion coming from the camera, because then the image is in motion, or it looks blurry, it looks out of focus. It's not focus issue, it's just a camera motion issue. But there are several ways to make this happen, to keep it still. We can put the camera on something steady. It could be a table, a rock, a fence post, etc. But the tool that was designed for this kind of thing is the tripod. So if you've got a tripod, use a tripod. Now, with these longer focal length lenses, 200, 400, 500, you're probably going to have a lens that is really heavy relative to the weight of the camera. And so a lot of them on the lens will have this little L bracket that's underneath it, and you'll connect that to your tripod mount instead of the camera. So it depends on the weight of the lens as to which is more appropriate, the camera or the lens. If the lens has that L bracket, use it. I see people take it off all the time. I guess there's reasons why you would, but this isn't one of them. Keep that L bracket on, connect that to your tripod, because that is the center weight for gravity. It just makes it a more stable. Besides, if your lens is too heavy, you could actually damage the mount on your camera, and we don't want to do that. All right, so no matter what, we need to steady the camera, and the longer the focal length, the more important keeping your camera steady becomes. Let's talk about color balance. This may seem odd, but daylight is the way to go when photographing the moon. The icon looks like the sun, a circle with some lines coming off of it. That's what the icon looks like. And you may be thinking, if you hadn't heard the beginning part of this, you may be thinking it's dark outside. It's not sunny outside. So therefore, why would I use the daylight balance? Because your subject is in daylight. It doesn't matter where you are. Your location is an irrelevant variable. The location of your subject is the only relevant variable when it comes to light. So therefore, you are putting it in daylight balance. Now, that's if and only if you use JPEG. If you're not using JPEG, if you're using RAW, and generally speaking, I'm going to recommend using RAW, then your color balance is irrelevant at the moment of creation. It's not irrelevant in post-processing. It's very relevant in post-processing. It's just not relevant during creation. If you're using JPEG, it's relevant during creation. You want to change that to daylight. The image that you see on that little screen on the back of your camera, the LCD screen, I call it confidence. The image you see on confidence is a JPEG image, even if you're creating in RAW. So therefore, you're seeing it with whatever color balance you've chosen. Or if you have it in auto balance, it's what the camera has chosen. So you are seeing it as a JPEG, not as a RAW. RAW doesn't do anything to an image. JPEG does. So if you create in RAW, which I recommend in most situations, and this was one of them, number one, your camera gives you the option. Number two, you have the software to manipulate a RAW. And number three, you know how to use the software. So if you're going to use RAW, you need to know how to use the software. You need to know how to turn it into something else, because a RAW image is not usable until it's been transferred to a JPEG or a PNG or a TIFF or some other type of file. If you have those things, the camera gives you the option. You have the software to be able to manipulate a RAW, and you know how to use that software, then I'm recommending RAW to you. And I'm thinking pretty much everybody falls into those categories. They have all three of those things. And so RAW is the way to go. Let me give you an example of where I wouldn't recommend RAW. It has nothing to do with this, but just in case you're curious. If you're photographing an event and you need those images to be uploaded to the website or to social media immediately, as fast as possible, if you feel good about your being able to get the correct exposure and the right color balance, then the quickest way is to have those as a JPEG already, because that is the quickest way to get them uploaded. But other than that, I generally wouldn't recommend using JPEG. I'd recommend using RAW because it gives you the most amount of leeway when it comes to post-processing. So I use things like Adobe Photoshop. I use Lightroom to manipulate images. And you're going to need something, of course, to manipulate those images. So enough about RAW and color balance. Let's move to the light variables, first with ISO. And ISO stands for International Standards Organization. Yeah. If that's the first time you've heard that, you're wondering, what the heck does that mean relative to the tool? What does that mean? It's really a bad name. There's a good reason for it. I don't know if I want to go into that. It's short enough. All right. So in 1983, filmmakers got together and they said, all right, we've got this discrepancy, and it confuses our consumers. So if you're in the U.S., you have ASA, American Standards Association. But let's say you were to fly over to Germany, they have DIN. So if you were to get a 100 speed film here in the U.S. and go over to Germany and say, I'd like to get a 100 speed film, it's not a 100 speed film there. It's 21 degrees. Those don't seem to have any correlation at all. So they got together and they decided to come up with an international standard. And it was called the International Standard Organization. They actually just used the American Standards Association. And so the films didn't change. It's just how they titled it, how they described it. So that's where International Standard Organization came up. Now, forget about that. It doesn't help you understand the process. It doesn't help you understand its purpose or how to use it. I like to change that acronym to mean the image sensors, that's the I, the S is sensitivity, and the O is option. It's your image sensor sensitivity option. And you have a range. Usually starts off at around 100, and it goes up and up and up, and the newer cameras have an even higher number. And this is one of those things, it's technology, it's software based, and so it does continuously improve. ISO compared to 10, 20 years ago is not the same thing as it is today. It's the same concept, but the quality level has increased tremendously during that period of time, and I believe will continue to improve. The other light variables are constants. There's no ability to improve them. They just are. They're units of measurement. So ISO. The lower the ISO, the higher the quality of the image, at least potentially. After you create an image, if you feel like the moon is too bright, you may want to lower that ISO. If you're already in 100, well, then you wouldn't change it unless you had lower numbers. If the ISO is as low as it goes, then maybe it's the shutter speed you need to change. Maybe it's the f-stop you need to change. So how do you know which to do first? Well, if your ISO can be lowered, lower the ISO. So if you've got that big, bright ball of light, lower the ISO, and it won't be that big, bright ball of light anymore. Now, if you're in a program mode, your camera will actually keep the amount of light constant. There's 3 program modes on most cameras. Program mode, shutter priority mode, and aperture priority mode. All 3 are program modes. Only one's called that, but all 3 are program modes. Program mode means your camera is responsible for exposure. And if it got it wrong and all you did was change the ISO, it's going to get it wrong again. It's the reason why I say put your camera in manual mode when you're photographing the moon. I might say that to some people all the time. But at least in this particular example, put it in manual mode, even if you're used to some other mode dial on the dial. Put it in manual mode. All right, so here's a couple of items that I want to make sure you know. This is something that I learned way back in I guess the 80s, late 80s. So this is the Sunny 16 rule. Again, you're photographing a subject that's in the sun. Sunny 16 rule. This is off the basic daylight exposure chart. Now, I don't expect you to know what that means. Don't even think you need to understand this. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail there. But it's a basic daylight exposure chart that we used to look at before we had the ability to see the image as we were creating it. We had film, therefore we couldn't see what the end result was yet. And so you had, probably in the 60s or 70s, I guess 70s, you started having meters inside the camera. Prior to that, you had handheld meters, which you still could use today, and in a lot of instances are preferable because they can do more than the meter that's inside your camera. But they would have to use a handheld meter, or if they couldn't afford that, they used the basic daylight exposure chart. And so it's just a relative. You change based on the relative amount of light. So you could use f16 as your shutter speed and your ISO and your shutter speed as the same number. So if you've got your ISO on 100, you put your shutter speed on 100 and your f-stop at f16. So there's all 3 light variables for you. That is your starting point. Now, because most of us are using digital, yes, a lot of people have moved back to film. And I've talked to some people with special projects that do digital all the time, but they have their own special personal projects that they use film with. So this applies. But because we are looking at the LCD screen for most of us, we can see the change that we're making. So we create one image using the Sunny 16 rule, and we decide, does it look right? If it doesn't, you're making a change. But this is your starting point, so you know where to begin, meaning you don't have to be comfortable with manual mode in order to do it. You just have to know the Sunny 16 rule. F16 with your ISO and shutter speed on the same number. 100, 200, 400, whatever. They're the same. Now, you may not see 100 on your shutter speed, so it may be 125, but the closest number to it. So that's it. It is as simple as that. This forms your starting point. Now, the amount of light will be much less if you're in an eclipse. So if you're photographing the moon in an eclipse, it's going to change. But this we're talking about just photographing the moon, photographing a partial moon, photographing a full moon. This is just a starting point. And with the bright moon that you're going to see on Wednesday, July 13th, this will be you'll collect too much light. The Sunny 16 rule will collect too much light. So it's still your starting point, but understand you're going to need to make a change. And what change is that? You may need to increase that shutter speed to a shorter period of time. 200, 250, a little bit. You won't need to change it a lot. But you change it to taste, meaning what you feel looks good. I do see images of the moon a little darker than it should be sometimes, and it actually looks really good. So if that's what you want, if that's the story you're trying to convey, we'll do that. Great. That's wonderful. You just make it a little bit darker if that's what you want. All right, so let's you can change either of the light variables. You can. I want my ISO though to be at 100. So I'm going to change my f-stop, or I'm going to change my ISO. Excuse me, my shutter speed. So if I want it darker, I'm going to choose a shorter period of time. So if I've started off at 100, I'm going to make it 250 probably. If that's not dark enough yet, I'm going to use a shorter period of time, which is a higher number. So 250, maybe I'm going to 500. Maybe I need something in between, but probably 500. That's one full stop of light. Now, let's talk about focus. Because even if you get the amount of light correct, you've got your composition correct, you've got everything right, if your image is out of focus, nothing else even matters. So how do you do this? Some cameras can do great photographing the moon. They'll focus on it just fine. But I have found other cameras that have a lot of difficulty focusing on the moon, especially if you don't have a higher focal length lens. You may find your camera, when it's trying to focus, is going vzz, vzz, vzz. If that's the case, you need to put it into manual focus. Now, that's not the same thing as manual mode. This is manual focus. So I want to have, I generally will put my camera in manual focus anyway when I'm photographing the moon. So I put it into manual focus, and I manually focus it. Now, again, if you're using a lower numbered focal length lens, it's going to be really difficult to focus on the moon. And so I will have a loop with me, this, so that I can put that up against my screen and I can see it just a little bit better. I'm putting it up against my viewfinder, but if you use the screen on the back to focus, then the LCD screen, then use that. And you may need something to be able to see it just a little bit better. This is an 8X loop. So it's just a little magnifying glass. Can you see that? This one's Agfa. So that's one of the tools that I use. And so that's just helping me with focus. I want to have those craters be sharp as they can possibly be. So, those moon conspiracy theorists, I want to be able to zoom in and see those cities that are on the moon. I actually would really like to see that, but I think it's funny. I think it would be cool to be able to see a city on the moon. I just don't believe they exist. Okay, just me. Those of you who believe it, hey, more power to you. More power to you. In fact, share with me what you know.
The dark side of the moon, Jim. The dark side of the moon.
So that's why I can't see it. Okay, good. All right. I love it. All right, so in addition to the stuff you're doing right there at your camera and thinking about your subject, I want you to also pay attention to your environment. Keep an eye out for opportunities around you, not just the subject, not just things in front of you, but maybe putting an object in the foreground would be kind of cool. So, and this is something Melissa mentioned earlier, a silhouette of some kind, having a tree in the foreground, having a tree with a rope swing on it might be cool in the in the foreground. Maybe you've got how old's your daughter? 11? 11, is that right, James? Yeah. Okay. So maybe your 11-year-old is swinging in that swing, or maybe she's not. Maybe she's still. In fact, I'm going to recommend that she's still. But wouldn't it be cool to see her as a silhouette with the beautiful full moon on Wednesday? I think that would be kind of cool. So different things like that. What about moving to where there's a body of water in the foreground, and you've got a reflection in that body of water? Man, there's so many cool things you can do. So I don't consider that advanced anyway, but it is adding more variables into the mix. There's a lot of good examples. I see some silly ones too, and those are fun. Mm-hmm. Look at that fun one with the elephants. Ooh, I like that wolf. Yep. Isn't that fun? Of course, I mean, these that she's just showing you now are composites. And so you create those in Photoshop or some other image manipulation software. They're fun to do. I like doing composites. I don't do them very often, but I do think that they're a lot of fun. Yeah, those are cool. Thank you for sharing those. All right. So now we're paying attention to our environment. We're thinking about what else could make this image interesting. If we want to include something other than the moon alone. And so that make it potentially more creative. It's to each his own, though. If you think it adds something to the photograph, wonderful. Awesome. If you think it distracts from the subject, well, then don't do it. It's not a problem. Whatever you feel is right, guess what? It is, at least for now. Maybe you have a difference of opinion later. So yeah, that's what I recommend. Now, let's talk about manual mode just a little bit more. So you've got your camera in manual mode. You're using the Sunny 16 rule as a starting point. The really cool thing about digital photography is that little screen on the back of your camera. That's the huge advantage over film cameras. You can see it and therefore make any adjustments that you want to right now. If it's still too bright, decrease the amount of light entering the camera. There are 3 ways to handle amount of light. And again, this is a review. I told you this part already, but I want to make sure that you've got this. Decrease the ISO if you can. I want that ISO to be as low as it can be. I want it to be the camera's native ISO, meaning your camera only has one ISO. The others are software derived. So if your lowest number is 100, then it is 100. There are cameras, though, that have numbers less than 100, and their native ISO is still 100. So every camera has a native ISO. That's actually the one that I want. That's the ideal one. That's the one with the highest possible quality when it comes to the image sensor and ISO. So I want to decrease that to 100 if I have that need. If I need to reduce the amount of light, I'm going to start off with 100. I want that to go to 100. So decreasing that ISO. If I need to get less light, I may need to increase my shutter speed. In other words, a shorter period of time that light is allowed to enter the lens and be collected on the image sensor. I may need to change the f-stop number. Now, that's aperture. Aperture, by definition, is just a hole that lets light in. But there's a unit of measurement to measure the size of that hole, and that's called an f-stop. It stands for focal, but nobody calls it that. Focal stop, f-stop. So when it comes to f-stops, the lower the number, the wider the opening. The higher the number, so let's say it's f16, f22, the higher that number, the smaller the opening. And the reason is because they are fractions. So if I've got 1/2 versus 1/4, 1/2 is more than 1/4 by double. Math and light. So the lower numbers mean more light is entering the camera. If my goal is to get less light, then I want to increase that number. Now, there are those who would say that there is a sweet spot on f-stops. And in some cases, that's true. But to me, the appropriate f-stop is the one that helps you get your goal. So that, to me, is the sweet spot. But f8 to f16 is what most people would consider a sweet spot. Some feel it's just f8, maybe just f11. But everyone would agree that it's somewhere in there that everybody would agree on between f8 and f16. Now, that doesn't mean the higher numbers are bad. It doesn't mean the lower numbers are bad. It doesn't mean that. It does mean, though, that it's possible with those higher numbers, f22, f36, that it is possible to get streaks coming off of light sources. And so sometimes you use that on purpose. If you wanted the lights that are like the starburst effect that's coming off of a light source, you want those streaks coming off of it. With those higher numbers, f22 and higher, you could purposefully do that. But we don't want that on the moon. So we probably don't want to. Now we're going to see it in our LCD screen. And so when you start noticing, that's when you back off of it. If you don't want it. But you might want it because it does look good in certain situations. Let's say it's just out of focus in the background. You have some white lights. Maybe it's on a restaurant or maybe it's Christmas lights. But you can purposefully, even without a filter that allows it, you could purposefully make the little starburst of the light come off of it. So that's a cool side tool. All right, here's some step-by-step directions. Number 1, get there early. And know exactly where the moon is going to be coming up on the horizon. And it's real easy to tell with certain tools. There's photo pills, there's time and date probably will show you exactly that time when it comes up. Now, where you are, elevation plays a role, but it's generally speaking, that's exactly the time it's going to be coming up over the horizon. And then there's the photographer's ephemeris, and there's golden hour. There's several different apps and websites that will help you with that kind of thing. So definitely use those tools. They're fantastic. Know exactly when it's going to be rising. Get there early. Put yourself in a situation, maybe some water in front of you, maybe a cold tree, where you have at least the potential to be able to have something in the foreground. Or not, whatever you want to do. But find that beautiful, find that interesting place that makes a great foreground or a completely open area. That's A. Then B, set up your tripod. I'm recommending using a tripod. If you don't have a tripod, you can still do this, but I would want the camera steadied somehow. And so if I don't have a tripod, I'm probably going to find a fence post or a rock or something to lean up against. But I've got a tripod, so that's what I'm using. C, mount your camera to your tripod or the lens, whichever is appropriate. D, clean that lens. Clean it. You should be cleaning it every time, or at least checking to see if it needs it. But use an ultra microfiber cloth. So the same thing you get when you get new glasses, but only use it for your lens. I have microfiber cloths with my logo on it, Landers Photography School, that I give out. And every once in a while, I'll see someone cleaning their lens with it, and then they'll wipe their sweat off of their cheeks with it. Okay, please don't do that. You transfer whatever you wipe onto your lens afterwards, because now that makeup that you've just wiped off or oil. So guys, you've got some oil on your skin. And women, if you're wearing makeup, it's going to wipe off on that microfiber cloth. Not a good thing for your lens. And when I remember one time I pointed that out, and she was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Oh my gosh. Do you have another one? Yes, but I'm not going to give you any more after this one. You make sure you don't wipe your face with it. But also don't wipe the rest of your camera down with it. Because if you're using, I use the viewfinder in my camera, so I've got it up against my face. If I wore makeup, what is going to get on the back of the camera? Makeup. Do not clean anything but the glass with an ultra microfiber cloth. And then put it away in a place where it's not going to be touching something else that has something that could rub off on it. All right. That was D. E. Use a cable release or remote. And if you don't have those, use your camera's delay timer. Set it on 2 seconds. That way you are hands-free at the moment that the light is being allowed to enter into your image, onto your image sensor. So cable release, in a remote. Now, cable release, I'm thinking tethered, or remote, I'm thinking untethered. And there's different types. There's the ones that only do that. There's intervalometers. There's different things. But use something where you do not have to touch the camera while you are creating the image. I generally just use the camera's timer. I just put it on 2 seconds and let that do it. But man, cable releases are, as far as photography equipment is concerned, they're cheap. So why not do that? Using your camera's delay timer has no cost at all. Your choice. All right. Number 2, find out what time the moon rises and sets. Now, this is either getting there early and knowing when it's going to be rising, but this is just some more detail on that. Maybe you have a local newspaper. It'll show that. Weather stations show that. And even Google Calendar, if you've got things that you can add into a Google Calendar. Moonrise is one of the things you can add in. Sunrise is too. So you can add that into your Google Calendar if you want to. But there's also websites like golden-hour.com, timeanddate.com. The Photographer's Ephemeris is a great app. Photo Pills is a great app. There's a bunch of them out there. Choose one. No, I was going to tell a story, but it's that story now. I think it might be too long. All right. So, number 3, start off with the Sunny 16 rule. F16, ISO 100, shutter speed 100. If that's not enough light, make sure you change it with a lower numbered f-stop. If not, or that's still not enough light, increase your ISO until you get the right amount. But you may, in some instances, you may need more light. In some instances, you may need less. If we're talking about what's coming up this coming Thursday, you're going to wind up, this coming Wednesday, you're going to wind up with more, you're going to wind up with too much light. So therefore, you're going to want to reduce it. But there's other times when you want more. So whichever way it is, you just adjust for it. All right. What do you guys think about that? Melissa, James, what do you guys think?
I'll let James, because I don't have as much I have so much echo coming off, I think. So.
That actually sounded good just this time.
Oh, okay, great. Well, yeah, like I said, with all those little tips and stuff like that, like when you were earlier, you were talking about the tripod and actually having that tripod set up so it doesn't mess up the mount on the camera body. There's also tripods for the lenses as well, correct? Because I've seen like Scott Schrader was a friend of mine who used to shoot wolves, and he used to have that mini tripod for his lens that was, because like I said, it's wolves, so he tries not to get that close to them. But he would just, he'd look like a hunter being laid out on the ground, and he's got his little mini tripod for that big old lens that just kind of sits up there in the front. Is it, with Moon, is it best to have a tripod separate for the lens?
It's based solely on the weight of the lens. If it's a heavy lens, it needs to be the lens needs to be on the tripod.
Now, what are some of what are the common errors that people probably make in stuff? Like, you're showing all these things, but I know it's a lot of people. Like, people just sometimes don't plan for the shot. Is there a way to really capture those, the moons that just on the spur of the moment? Now, the f-stop and the shutter speed, those sound like those are going to really help you out right there. But if you're just happening to catch a moment, is it going to be just on those three things that is that all you're going to be able to work with, and will that be enough?
Well, you've got the tools you need with just the camera, but we need to stabilize that lens. And our main problem is going to be, our main problem with perception is that the moon's going to be too tiny. We look up and we see this huge, beautiful moon, and we photograph it with our cell phone or with our regular camera. And you might have to mute while I'm talking. Because I can hear me. So when you look up and you see this big, huge, beautiful moon, and you pull out your cell phone, you pull out your digital camera, you wind up with this frame with this little dot in the middle of it. It doesn't look at all like what you see it with your own eyes. And your thought is, why is that happening? Well, the solution is a longer focal length lens. We need to zoom in on the lens. And you're probably thinking, but it looks so big. It does, but relative to what? Look at your environment. You've got all this dark sky and the moon's here, but relative to everything else, it's this big compared to the entire scene. So therefore, it's exactly the size it's supposed to be. It doesn't look that way to you. But the solution is a longer focal length lens. Now, if you're just driving and you happen to see this beautiful moon, chances are you're not running around with this big, beautiful lens in your car. And so you don't have this as an option. And you'll be forced to just zoom in. You'll be forced to crop in on it, which means you're cropping in on pixels. Cropping is probably the worst thing you can do to quality, as far as quality, to an image. It's the worst thing of the things that you really do need to do. So I definitely want to crop my image appropriately, but I want to do it as much as possible in camera so that I reduce the post-production cropping. Post-production cropping throws out pixels. It just totally deletes them. Let's say you have a 21 megapixel camera, which some people would consider a lot and some people would consider nothing. That's not much at all. But let's just say you have a 21 megapixel camera and you've done a vertical image. This should be a horizontal image, but you want it to be vertical. And so you crop. What are you doing? You're cropping out 7 and 7. You've cropped out 14 pixels. You're left with only the 7 in the middle. So it's like you had a 7 megapixel camera, not a 21 megapixel camera. Your 21 megapixel camera is only 21 if you do no cropping post-production. Otherwise, you are reducing.
I want to say in prints, I've seen people do that, and metal prints seem to be the most beautiful things for like the moon, the lightning and thunder kind of like photos. But you do see the pixelation, and I know that they went and cropped because and it's weird. Just it's probably like me being one of the. I see it so much, and I'm used to looking for that. But I mean, I used to refuse. Refuse prints for our gallery that we would carry. And it was little things like that would, basically get a giclée print or a metal print probably rejected from the gallery as if we saw that pixelation in there. So yeah, I'll see that a lot. I'll see photographers kind of do that with their lightning shots or their moon or sun shots because they shot really wide. They want to just really get a certain section. So that's interesting because I always think a lot of photographers are pretty skilled at that. And when they go to do their prints, I tend to see that sometimes.
Yeah. And of course, that is an advantage with the larger the larger megapixel cameras, but cameras come in three different, just like the fries at McDonald's. They come in three different sizes: small, medium, and large. And we all know that cell phone cameras are going to be small, but most of us don't realize even the best 35 millimeters are still in the small category. Now they blow away cell phones, but there's something that blows away them. That's the medium format. And there's something that blows away medium format. That's large format. So we have these different format, these different sizes of image sensors, and the larger the image sensor, that gives us more room, more leeway to crop, and the image still look good. So if you've got a medium format digital camera, and you crop, you create a horizontal, and then you crop it into a vertical, you still have probably more than a lot of the 35 millimeter digital cameras. You still have just as much, if not more, than them in that photograph, so it still looks good, or it looks acceptable. For those that are very picky, you're going to see it. For those who don't know what to look for, you may not even notice. So but the difference in price makes it where people really don't have an interest in those medium and large format cameras unless there's a very specific reason to do so. So if you're photographing wildlife for National Geographic, or you're creating photo books or large prints, which FinerWorks does, beautiful large prints, or appropriately sized for their purpose, you're going to want to maximize the pixels and reduce any post-production cropping by getting it right in camera where you are able to.
How much should you allow in framing up your shot? I know some people like to frame the shot both. They like to have the excess on the side for that reason, to really, I guess, in post production, to edit a little bit of cropping. And when you frame I want to say a landscape like that, how much should you give yourself to kind of work with?
That's a good question. There's times when you create an image and you don't know what its end result is going to be. There's other times when you create an image and you know exactly what its end result is supposed to be. For instance, with my family portrait work, I know exactly the size it's going to be printed long before I create the image. I know most portrait photographers are probably shocked by that. How could you know what they're going to order? Because I believe it's important to sell what you're selling before you have the actual print to be able to sell it. That way you can create exactly what someone wants. So I'm in their home, I see where it's going to be displayed on their wall. I know the appropriate size because the location, the space tells me what the appropriate size is. It also tells me whether it's going to be a horizontal or a vertical, whether it's going, where it's going to be, if it's going to be a horizontal above a doorway, and how wide that's going to be. I know this ahead of time. So therefore, I can plan the cropping ahead of time. So the majority of my photographs, I already know what the dimensions are going to be. And so let's say that I'm doing a family portrait, and I know that they want an 8x10 for grandma. Now, for themselves, they want something larger because, it's a family portrait. It's going to be on the wall. So, of course, they want a wall portrait. But grandma just probably wants an 8x10. So, therefore, I'm going to leave an inch on each side because an 8x10 is not equivalent to a 35 millimeter image sensor. An 8x12 is. So if I know ahead of time they want an 8x12, I'm making sure that I've got extra on each side, and I'm making that image a little more stacked, a little bit higher in that center section. So I'm filling the frame.
Yeah, I want to chime in on that kind of as a side note, because we see this all the time, and surprisingly, from even experienced professional photographers on occasion, and I think it's just an oversight more than anything, but more so with newer photographers, where they will not consider the what they're printing on, like for instance canvas. They won't give themselves enough allowance for what might wrap if they're doing a full gallery wrap. So you have tops of heads starting to wrap over the top of the canvas. It's real important to kind of give yourself, kind of have a safe zone for everything that you want to be displayed. Matter of fact, in post, the tool that people use on our website to order prints, when you click on the image, in many cases, it'll open up a screen that you will see kind of like a green box, which is meant to be your safe zone. And depending upon the size of the print and what's being printed on, it could be anything from a quarter of an inch to an inch. And sometimes it's just, you just want to make sure that everything stays within that area, is kind of concentrated within that area. You don't want things too far to the edge and risk elements being lost just in the printing process. Maybe it's fine on screen, but a lot of times it doesn't look good, especially if you put it like it's a 8x10 photo print and you put it behind matting. Matting covers up some of that photo, and if the person's head is right there, at a quarter inch from the top of that print, then there's a good chance it's going to be that mat's going to be right on top of that person's head, and that just from a composition standpoint doesn't look very good. So give yourself plenty of, just be conscientious how you're going to be printing it, what you're going to be printing it on, and make sure that you have that extra space.
Yeah, all that makes sense. I agree. So have you guys created beautiful images of the moon before? Yeah? Do you enjoy looking at them when they come through as orders?
We actually have, Melissa, don't you have an acrylic print sitting in your office? It's actually of a full moon. It's kind of cool. But it's it's face mounted acrylic where it's just a full moon. I don't know if she can show it to you. Yeah, I think your screen, your fake background kind of might interfere with it,
making it difficult to see.
Yeah, we actually have it. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I think she's about to.
Yeah, I'm going to try to show it here. Hold on one second. We'll stop sharing there, and let me just see if I can take off my fake screen here. Okay. So there we go.
So that's on a non-glare acrylic.
That's cool.
That we offer. So
that's really cool.
So just a full moon. Notice how the person has plenty of space around the edges, and I think from I've seen people send similar photos, full moon photos, where it's like right on the edge, and they ordered like gallery wrapped canvases, and it's like,
dang it,
doesn't quite work. And
who's the artist?
You can fix. Fortunately, you just put extend some black on the edges.
So you're being nice to them.
Yeah.
Who's the artist on that image?
Show the back of that though. Oh, that's I think it's just a stock image.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We've actually had people order that, like ones they've taken themselves on acrylic like that, and we thought that would be a good example to actually have in the office. So yeah,
that acrylic is thick.
It's heavy.
That's a quarter inch acrylic.
Wow. Yeah, that looks high quality. It looks like something that you'd see in an office or a museum.
It's one of higher end products, like the metal, but it's much more substantial than a metal print, just because of that thickness and the weight. The way it has to be packaged. We can't just put it in a regular cardboard box. We have to use these honeycomb or these honeycomb. What do you call it? Corrugation has to be.
It's like a thicker corrugated board that kind of is custom cut for the pieces.
Yeah, and it's kind of nests right in there. We use that same method for shipping on some of the frames and canvases as well, but it really protects it quite good. But yeah, it's a cool option, especially on a glossy. I like the glossy more because it really causes the image to pop, and the image is printed on our satin luster paper or metallic paper, which are both technically we label them as fine art papers, but technically they're a photo paper, and so and then a layer, a clear layer, adhesive layer is applied, uh, and then it's mounted to the acrylic glass face down, and it's a very difficult process, but the results are amazing. The edges, polished edges,
Hmm.
paint hardware included. Yeah, it's a really cool product.
And that is. I think any of us, if that was our image, would be proud to share that.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Hey, that's me.
One thing that people, I think, who shoot moon photos do look for, and I think that's a question at least I have presented to me through social or just them coming in, is where's the market to go ahead and sell? And I tell them, the same thing for, it's funny, go follow people on Nat Geo and and places like that, and get them to come see your Instagram. And start posting along those lines of a moon photos or your sunsets and stuff like that, and build that audience. I mean, that's really, no matter what you're shooting, you need to build the audience or your niche kind of group on there. We have a featured photographer on Geo Galleries. He doesn't do moon, but he actually does vintage signs and vintage type pieces from advertising agencies from the early 1900s that would, so the typography letters are these metal blocks that are huge, and he finds them at flea markets, vintage sales, and then he makes his composition of how he wants them laid out and photographs them. And I went to his, he mentioned in his bio that he started this as an Instagram photographer only. I went
Hmm.
to his Instagram and he's got 37,000 followers
Nice.
because you're building that interest. You shoot things that people are interested in, and and that group somehow gravitates to you. They find it, and I think people who have, I think photographers are especially lucky in that they're able to convey something that people can immediately identify with because they're framing an image. They're like, how did you say, you don't take a photo, you create a photo? Jim, I think, is one of your terms you use a lot on here. So yeah, if you're creating something that's just framed up beautifully for people that they recognize, it's like I see that every day, but I never would have thought to look at it that way. You can really create a following as a photographer for something as simple as moon, and then from that move on into selling your prints.
Yeah.
now, Jim, is your workshop, and some of these workshops that we have, is this one available online as well?
I
This be done online?
so a the majority of my workshops that I do are going to be done in person,
Okay.
and so it would not be available to someone who wasn't local.
Okay.
Well, I guess if someone wanted to drive or fly in, but I can't imagine they would. Uh, but so yeah, the workshop generally means it's going to be in person. A seminar can the seminars that I do are often done online, and I'm
Yeah.
doing a lot more on the business side now than I used to. So for those who are trying to earn a living, especially those who are portrait photographers, that's where the majority of my expertise is in.
Mhm.
But I think I've mentioned before, if anybody wants to actually, like you were just saying, have a trip to San Antonio, go on to the landersphotoschool.com page and go see when Jim is doing these, and kind of make it your own photo excursion here, because the tips that you share are invaluable, but a lot of your photoshops and stuff that you do, especially when y'all do a shot outside somewhere, you take people to some really neat spots here in San Antonio.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
now,
Now, now,
um,
It's a lot of fun.
next month you're going to be in Colorado, aren't you?
So there was going to be a trip to Colorado, but
Oh,
it didn't work. It fell through.
oh
So
no.
I won't be doing it. So that was on the books. That was planned, but it's not going to happen.
Oh, so
I
much for
appreciate you asking.
yeah.
That would be a good one.
Yeah.
You know what? Norma, the same person that gave me those good suggestions at the beginning of this presentation, sent me another one just a moment ago, and I didn't address it, so I'm really glad that she pointed it out. Not all photographs of the moon are at night, and I really only talked about those that are at night. The ones in this picture you're seeing here now are just after the sun has gone down, so you can still see there's light in the sky. But there's plenty of times when the moon is out during the day. You can see it. It's bright sunny day, and there's the moon. So how do you photograph it then? Well, it's interesting because your auto mode on your camera usually does a pretty good job of photographing the moon during the day. And it's because auto mode and all the program modes are very much geared towards bright, beautiful, sunny days. They do very well in that environment as far as getting the amount of light right. It's not the only variable, but it's an important one. And so, just using auto mode is okay. I'm still not going to use it, but if that's all you had, or if that's all you knew, then you're probably going to be satisfied with that photograph. I still would be thinking about my environment. Look around. Can I get something that's cool that's going to be in the foreground? Maybe that's something that helps me judge distance. Maybe put a person or a couple in front of it. Maybe I want to go to Houston and photograph one of those big rockets at NASA in the foreground of the moon on a bright, beautiful, sunny day. So those are options as well. So yeah, it's not just during the night, not during the time where it feels dark to us, that you can get great photographs of the moon.
great. Now, Jim, next month we're going to be talking about print delivery and installation. Can you kind of elaborate on what that topic's going to cover?
Okay, so this one is very different from what I've presented before for the Photo Tips Monthly, because this is an end result process, meaning I'm making a plan to go into their home and do a delivery and installation, art installation. Now, it is something that you can outsource. In fact, for most of us, I would recommend you outsource it. But I did it myself, where I would go to their home and plan what it is we were going to be doing, see the spot where it's going to be displayed so that I could know exactly what size and make any suggestions on what image we were going to be creating for them. Now, if this was artwork that I had as in stock, I would probably just ask them to do a Zoom call with me and turn their cell phone to the spot on the wall where they were thinking of having it done. But I'll talk about that more in detail. But the end result goal is that we have created a custom piece of art for the space it's going to go into. In my opinion, we don't have to be, but we can be the expert at the complete process. Again, we don't have to be. We can choose this. This is an option that some have never even thought of, and others may be scared of because it adds in more variables. But if our goal is to give more value, to add value to what it is that we're doing, being part of the installation process certainly fits that description. My motivation for even doing that was an image that I had created for someone. They had possession of this image. They were having a party. I was invited to this party. So I show up and I'm looking around for this image to be displayed on the wall. I'm excited. I'm in my mind, I'm thinking someone's going to look at that and say, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. And they're going to say, well, the artist, the person who created it is right over there. Let me introduce you to him. That's what I thought was going to happen. That's the vision that I had in my head. But guess what happened? Although they intended to have that up for the party, they were planning a party. they had a lot of things to do. I mean, they have their own life plus this. So them taking the time to put it on the wall, well, didn't happen before the party. And so when I asked, they said, "Oh man, I really wish I had time to put it up. It's in the closet right over there." Yeah, that let a lot of air out of my balloon. So, but my that was my reason for adding in installation into this mix, and then the planning of where this is going to go, so that I was helping them out with this entire process, not just the beautiful artwork, but where it's going to go, how it's going to be mounted. I want it to be ideal for the exact spot. That way, or what I do is I find out what's in the entire environment, and I make suggestions based on that, so that it looks like a custom piece designed for this space, not out of place. So we'll talk about the how. There's a little bit of the why, but we'll talk about the how and what kind of steps I go through, what I'm thinking about, what tools I use in order to make that actually happen. It's scary at first, but it's fantastic.
What do you have coming up? I guess it's photo essay, and I know you have some a contest also coming up as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I do. Thank you for asking. The Photo Essay Camera Club, it meets in person at the Dominion Country Club, but it is also simulcast to the Photo Essay Facebook page. So that's facebook.com/groups/photo essay, PHOTOSA. Hey, yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. So that is it is simulcast to that page. Ooh, you have it in dark mode.
Yeah, I have dark mode because I have to look at this computer so long.
It's simulcast to this page. So if you're there on the second Thursday of every single month at 6:30 until 8, then you would see it as one of the top thing in the news feed, and you would click on it so that it would actually start playing, because it's not playing automatically. You have to click on it to see it play. But you'll see that, and you could watch the presentation. The presentation this month is really interesting. It's a photographer who goes around the world. I mean, he spends a lot of time not at home photographing ballerinas in different countries. And he's been working on this personal project now for 4 years. He's planning on putting a book together, and he will complete this 4-year, maybe it's nearly 5 years by now, but he'll be completing this project in September. And so he's going to be sharing what it is he's doing, what kind of things he is working on, his motivation for doing it, what his philosophies and procedures are in order to make this happen. And I'll share one of the things. He does it in one shot. He creates this entire scenario. He puts he has the ballerina in their spot based on whatever he wanted this image to be. He creates one image, and if he gets it, great. If he doesn't, he moves on to the next idea that he had. It's one shot. So that forces him to do it right in camera every single time, even with moving subjects like the ballerinas sometimes are. So this is pretty cool. It's a local San Antonio artist, and he's going to be coming into the Dominion Country Club 6:30 it's a week from today, and sharing his art. His name's David Turan. Mm-hmm. David Teran, David Turan. So good guy, a lot of energy, humble guy, good person. You'll enjoy his presentation. And then Sunday, a week from this Sunday, is the annual San Antonio Youth Photography Tournament. So we have a regular photography tournament, which is ages 12 and up. So you have to be somewhere between 12 and 112. We don't accept anyone who's 113. Again, I like being silly. But 12 and up, that's in October. And that's a big one in October. That'll be the 10th annual San Antonio Photography Tournament. But this one that's coming up on this a week from this Sunday, the 17th, is the annual San Antonio Youth Photography Tournament, and that's from ages 5 to 15. And this is a fun tournament. In fact, we expect the majority of the photographers, both of them are fun. But we expect some of them will have never even used a camera before. That their parents are letting them borrow theirs for the tournament, and you go to saphotoevents.com to get information about that.
Great.
SA Photo Events.
And I believe FinerWorks has as a sponsor on some of those. So
FinerWorks is a sponsor on and has been a sponsor for every single tournament.
yeah.
FinerWorks has not missed a single one and has been one of the top 3 major sponsors every single time.
We look forward to getting winners in who get their stuff printed, especially like you're saying with the youth ones. It's great to have your piece, printed. It just
It
it,
is.
it really is something, and I think it really kickstarts, younger people into wanting to do photography. Um, Same thing with even as I'm watching my daughter's friends all into digital art and stuff. There's something about print that just makes it feel real. Like this is a career path, not only
Absolutely.
a hobby, but a career path. So I think that's really a cool thing that we get when we get the winners and stuff in. Well,
Yeah,
Jim,
I
did
like
you
that.
have anything else that you want to announce before you sign off?
I think that's it. We've got some portrait business classes coming up, but you can reach out to me at jim@landersphotoschool.com if you have an interest, jim@landersphotoschool.com, or just go to that domain name, landersphotoschool.com, and you can reach out to me either way.
Great. James, did you have anything else that you
Yeah,
wanted?
I did recall what it was. We did recently launch something else, and that is we added a couple new papers, fine art
Mm-hmm.
papers. Really, if you like the premium Giclée, which has been one of our most, probably our second. Well, I think the watercolor bright white might now be second, but uh, it's in the top 5. we'll say it's in our top 4. If you like the premium Giclée, one of the only real consistent complaint about it is it was not bright white enough. So what was it, about a month ago we added a bright white version of the premium Giclée, and it's actually under the Breathing Color brand, but we call it bright white, premium Giclée bright white, and it's the same textured base, but with a whiter surface, but the same base paper. And then and it really makes images pop, and it has that aggressive texture that some people like, or their fine art paper prints. And then the other one we added was I think
Really
I
good.
believe it's Breathing Colors flagship fine art paper, which is the Elegance Velvet. Now, it's very different than the Somerset Velvet, the Epson Somerset Velvet, or the fine art paper velvet. Epson Somerset Velvet and fine art paper velvet are essentially the same paper. They just have their own name brands to apply to them, but they come from the same mill and all that. But the Elegance Velvet has the thickness of the premium Giclée, but has a very subtle texture. So it's not an overpowering texture. Just at a quick glance, it's going to look, and you might think it's a smooth paper, but it has incredible Dmax, which means a wide range or wide depth of darks, and really um, brights, or really light brights. So it has that wide color spectrum, and we started offering that
Last week?
and last week, was it? Okay.
Yeah,
uh,
that's it.
and it's already gotten lots of praise from our users. Yeah, it's a great paper. I we did have a sale last week. Unfortunately, that's for the Elegance Velvet, but
Mhm.
there's no reason why you can't order a small 8x10, just to try it out. And I
Yeah.
think you'll be pleasantly surprised by it.
Yeah, and the pricing is really great. It's very comparable to some of our other papers.
Yeah,
So
it is. Yeah, it is. We it took a lot of work because it is
nice paper.
Green Colors flagship paper, but we were able to aggressively or work out some aggressive pricing on it so that we didn't have to charge $20 for an 8x10 like some of our competitors do.
Yeah. It's a great paper. I had loved it when we saw the sample of that. And then, like you said, next coming up soon. So if you get onto our newsletter, go onto our website, especially if we always announce our sales on our website as well as our social. You're looking at having those acrylic, uh, those new acrylic plaque prints that we have coming
Yeah,
up on sale
and,
soon, right?
and I actually got the instructions on how to do that decal mode. Uh,
Um,
I got that posted
on
while
our
Jim
blog.
giving his presentation. So
Okay.
yeah, if you go to that page,
If you go under help and you're going to go to news and tips and get to our
no,
blog.
well, you can just go to that product page. The links
Oh,
there.
okay. You actually did it from the product
Yeah,
page. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So, but it's now should be right at the very top. And I think,
Let me just get on there.
yeah, or just, yeah.
So, yeah, if you go to details and prices and for the product page, detailed instructions can be found here for that printing and just click on that. This actually for photographers is going to be another great item to have there to, just offer. This is something amazing. I think you can do a QR code then kind of on here, right, James?
I've seen some people do QR codes, not with us yet, but I've seen this type of product. It's popular on Etsy, but people do like a QR code, and people will
Yeah, I'm thinking for
offer
photographers, you could
yeah,
do like a cover photo album picture there with a QR code that leads you to an
that's what they
online album.
yeah, that's what they do. A lot of times they'll do a QR code and you scan it with your phone, and it'll open up the song on Spotify or something like
Mhm.
that, right where the song, you know, the on that particular
Yeah,
spot on the timeline of the song. But yeah, you'll see these a lot. These are very popular on Etsy. Um,
they are. Yeah.
this is what kind of brought about this product because there were some of our users were needing a company that could produce these for them. So
Yeah. So if you just follow that link, like James said, you'll have the instructions here on how to go ahead and set up that print so you can have it printed here on there on your order.
yeah,
Oh, great. Anything else?
that's it.
Either? That's
That's a
it.
cool product.
It
Yeah.
is. It's a very cool product. I can't
Mhm.
wait to see prints on it. That'll be fun. I can't wait to see what the sale is going to be like too. And I think if you went back and look on it, I mean the prices also had bulk
They're,
prices as well.
yeah, yeah, they're pretty reasonable. That's not the final price. It's kind of the introductory price.
Hmm.
Um, they may go up a little bit, but probably not much. Because but they're relatively they're we wanted to uh, we want to have some leeway for some of our order fulfillment, the partners that we fulfill for, so that we have some room to um,
Make a markup on that.
yeah, that they can mark them up. But so the prices aren't yet set in stone, but
Yeah.
the sale that will be running will be uh, be a very reasonable price.
Um,
Yeah.
what are you seeing, James, on like the 5x7s as far as what they're retailing on Etsy or from some of the
I've
have
seen
they
them all over the place, so yeah, so I it's hard to say. Some of them aren't using the solid wood base. Believe it or not, that solid wood base is probably material wise is probably worth more than the acrylic.
Acrylic.
Yeah, but but anyway, yeah. So
Yeah.
uh,
That'd be great. Oh, we'll have that coming out soon. So just watch your newsletter, our site, and our social for the announcement for that sale. And Jim, as always, thank you so much for taking time out and doing this. We appreciate it so much.
Of course. Happy to help. Happy to talk about photography. It's so much fun.
Well, great. We look forward to next month because, like I said, you kind of help people get into finding ways to take a hobby to a career, and all of that always just instills confidence in people to do it. So we totally appreciate you having these here. And again, anybody who needs to, it's going to be up on our YouTube channel. You can go to First Thursdays and rewatch any of Jim's previous recordings from our Photo Tips Monthly. And with that, we'll say goodbye and see you guys. What do you call it, next month?
Sounds great. Thanks, Melissa. Thanks, James.
Bye, guys.